And by the way, welcome everybody. I do have notes I'm going to be looking at so that I can, because there was a lot I wanted to cover. I wanted to make sure I would remember it. And this is not a canned thing. This is relatively new. But hello, so glad you're all here. Whether you're watching live, and I'll do some Q&A at the end, or whether you're watching this later. But you may have noticed we're living in an interesting time right now. There seems to be a lot going on. And so I wanted to point out, there's a lot of fears that are up for people. There are, hold on, let me get this all going. No, okay.
Is your video supposed to be on, Michelle? I don't see it. I just see a picture of you. It's a nice picture of you. There you are. There you be. Hello.
You're welcome. Good to know. So, okay. So there's a lot of fears that are up for people. There are, let's see if we, let me just, because I wrote a lot of them down. So there's a lot of political fears up. There's, well, there was fears about the pandemic. So there was fears about viruses. There were fears about vaccines. There's right now a lot of fear about war, right? There's a lot of political fear. Some people are afraid of conservatives. Some people are afraid of liberals. Some people are afraid of governments in general. Other people are afraid of shadow governments, conspiracies. You got your economic uncertainty, lots of fears about inflation. You got fears about climate change, fears about social change. Let's see, there's the Illuminati. What else we got? We got, every couple of years, just in case, they try to scare us with some new insect. I don't know if you remember killer bees. Killer bees were going to come get us all. Recently, it was murder hornets. And just recently, they found some new insect. I can't remember what it is. Probably a spider, because people are always willing to believe the worst thing about spiders. But everywhere you look right now, it seems as though people are trying to scare you. Now, especially if you watch the news. So, and this is not a judgment against the media or the news, but attention is their currency. That's what drives, that's what keeps them in business, is attention. And sadly, because fear gets people's attention, they utilize fear a lot. Whether it's coming from a place of intentionally manipulating fear or an unintentional, like a good intentioned place of, well, you need to be informed. There's a whole lot of fear mongering. Like even in times, a couple years back, before everything got really heightened, could be watching the local news and some cheerful anchor person would say, coming up next, 10 things in your refrigerator that may be killing you. But first, these messages. So there is a lot out there that is designed to scare you. And one thing that all of these have in common is this presupposition that our safety, our well-being, and in fact, control is something that's outside of us. Whether it's the economy, the weather, government, a virus, there is this presupposition that our well-being is at the effect of or in the hands of others. This is where so much of it stems from. If that is not the case, and if the sun is shining and there's nobody standing there threatening you right now, then perhaps you're not in danger. But we'll come to more of that later. But what I do want to do at a certain point in this, I'm going to be taking you through an exercise to help you notice fears that you may have or beliefs that you may have that are based in fear that you may not even realize are there. Because what we are experiencing now is the heightened outpicturing of our collective beliefs. That's what there is. Now, by the way, just to say about the news, because it sounds like I was a little bit harping on the news, all news is filtered. All news is filtered. Whether it's intentional, they have an agenda, or whether it's unintentional, all news is filtered because human beings, our experience is filtered. The news cannot be objective because human beings do not experience an objective reality. What we think of as an objective reality out there is something that's a deeply held either individual or cultural belief. We can talk physics later if you like, but physicists will back me up. There's no out there really out there to a certain extent. So all news is filtered. Either all news is real news or all news is fake news. But if you find, let's say, a news outlet that you think now they're telling it how it really is, then you have found a news outlet that matches your beliefs pretty closely. That's what that means. The more certain you are that what they're telling you is real, the closer a match their beliefs are to yours. Because all of our reality is filtered. And filters aren't bad things. I was recently on Airbnb. I was looking for a place in the south of France, and filters really helped make it much easier. Because a world of limitless possibilities for a three-dimensional human being, unlimited possibilities is really hard to navigate. So even as infants, we start filtering our world. Otherwise, the babies that don't learn how to screen out and filter what comes through their senses, they do not make it. Because in a three-dimensional world and a three-dimensional body with a three-dimensional brain, that is too much. And so in a three-dimensional human experience, everything is filtered for our sanity's sake and for our ease sake. Like I said, putting in a couple filters on Airbnb really made it easier for me to find what I wanted without having to look at hundreds of overpriced venues with half a bathroom. I'm not interested in something that's $1,000 a night with half a bathroom. I would like a full bathroom or two. So filters can be useful, but a lot of the filters that we have running both individually and collectively are either old and not useful or downright destructive. So we'll talk about those beliefs, especially beliefs about safety and power that are running. We'll do an exercise that lets you discover some of what you have running. People will sometimes argue with me about this though. They'll say to me, well, positive thinking is all well and good, but I'm talking about real problems. This is the real world. By the way, I did have somebody who'd actually been to one of my workshops. She videotaped it and she called what I did the power of positive thinking. I have never done any positive thinking. Just so you know what the difference is. There used to be a comedian in the 50s. I think his name was Eddie Lawrence. He was called the old philosopher. And he would do this thing where he would say, so you say you lost your job. You say it's 4 a.m. and your kids ain't come home yet. You say your wife went out for a sandwich, a corned beef sandwich a week ago and the sandwich came back, but she didn't. Is that what's bothering you, buddy? Well, lift your head up and hold your head up high and you get out and you show the world, you never give up. That's positive thinking. That's a lot of work. And it rarely produces change. So I'm not talking about positive thinking. I'm actually talking about rewiring our individual and collective patterning and realities. And secondly, every single thing we call a real event is both created and stabilized by our collective thoughts, beliefs, and emotions. Changing those creates different real events. Just to give you some examples, I was lucky enough to get to attend a workshop with Anita Moorjani. Anita Moorjani, if you don't know who she is, had a phenomenal near-death experience. She had end-stage cancer. Her entire body was riddled with tumors the size of lemons. She was wasted away. Her body was distended and she fell into a coma. She had an amazing near-death experience. And during that, she absolutely knew, she first off could feel the beauty that she was, the love that she was, the incredible power that she was. She experienced like the true nature of who we are. She got to experience that about herself and all of us. And when she came out of the coma, she absolutely knew that she could clear up the cancer. And within 5 days, the tumors were gone, riddled. Within 2 weeks, there was no trace of cancer in her body. That's unheard of. And for the tumors to have gone away that fast, the doctors said there must be permanent liver damage. There was no liver damage. Joe Dispenza, many of you know, a client of mine, somebody who came to one of my money magic workshops, was at a Joe Dispenza workshop recently in Mexico during the COVID thing. They tested everybody. They took a sample of everybody's blood, I think, and they kind of split each sample in two. And before the workshop, they took that sample of everybody's blood and they introduced the COVID virus to it. Then they had this workshop, this couple days of meditation and visualization and working on their beliefs. And at the end, they took the other part of the blood sample and introduced the COVID virus to it. And in the samples from the end, the virus could not take hold in any of the samples at the end of the workshop. That's a real event. This is not just positive thinking. I mean, for a while, fire walks were all the rage, and a friend of mine went to one, and they would tell you before you do the fire walk, if you have any fears, don't do it. And the friend that I had, she said there was one woman who was really scared, and they said, don't do it. But then she felt all this peer pressure, so she did it anyway. Well, her feet got burnt to a crisp. Everybody else was fine. Everybody else who did it was fine. That's a real world event. I mean, scientists have known about the placebo event forever, right? If you give, in a test study, you give some people a placebo, a guaranteed percentage will get better from the placebo. There's another thing that I like to tell people a lot. It's a story, it's a true story, but it's a useful metaphor, and it's about George Washington's coat. Because before the American Revolutionary War, George Washington was fighting for the British again in the French Indian War. And there was a battle where the Indians had singled him out. He was an officer, and he was a mounted officer. Not everybody had a horse, but he was a mounted officer. The British were still fighting in those like columns, organized columns, whereas the French and the Indians were hiding behind trees, fighting guerrilla style. So it was really easy for them to pick off the British officers. They were up there on a horse. They were lined up perfectly. It was like a shooting gallery. They noticed right away that George Washington was, first off, he was a big man. He was like 6'2" at a time when most people were 5'6". And they could tell he was a leader. So they had all their sharpshooters trained on him. And they were about 30 feet away. Men on either side of him, every single other officer was either killed or wounded. He had 2 horses shot out right from under him. Not a scratch on him. After the battle, they looked at his coat. There were 4 bullet holes in his coat and 1 in his hat. He had shell fragments in his hair. Now, if it sounds like an apocryphal story, that coat is actually in the Smithsonian Museum. And years later, one of the Indian chiefs sought him out because he wrote about it in his diary, which I think is also in the Smithsonian, that this Indian chief said, we finally realized we could not hit him. Now, recently I was watching a show, and one of the guys who had been on a foiled terrorist attack on the train from, I think it was Amsterdam to Paris. These 2 guys decided to, when the terrorist started his attack, they decided to rush him and attack him. And I heard this part that I hadn't heard before. He said, yeah, the guy's gun jammed. Now, isn't that interesting? You know, that man trained with that gun. You know, he probably knew how to take it apart, put it together. How interesting that in this particular case, it just jammed. We don't realize how much our beliefs affect the world around us right down at an atomic level. It's not, beliefs are not just things that happen in your head. One of the reasons I am so passionate about changing your beliefs is because we can all be bulletproof. If somebody's coming at us with a gun, it can jam. More likely, we will not encounter people with guns. We will not encounter those kind of dangerous situations when we have shifted our beliefs. So let me talk for a minute about what is a belief, because some of you have heard me tell this so many times, you could probably do it for me. But we probably also have some new people on this call, because a lot of people think a belief is just a conscious thing that you have, and so you can consciously change it. Well, I'll just change that belief. I will write it on a piece of paper, I will crumple it up and throw it away, and the belief will be gone. But that's not how it works. That will not change a belief. That just creates more litter. A belief, most of our beliefs are in place by age 3 and pretty much all of it by 6. And here's how beliefs start. Beliefs start as pure association. So it starts even when you're in the womb. So if you're there floating around in the amniotic fluid and your mother, father, or both are having a difficult or stressful or some kind of upset, the little organism that is you, that does not yet have conscious thought, it has experience. So there it is floating around, and oh, there's this stress, this tension. That little organism feels the stress and tension. Now, there is not any kind of cognitive thought going on for a child in the womb that can say, huh, my parents seem to be experiencing limitations in their expression of joy and abundance. They seem to be feeling limited. They seem to be experiencing powerless and helplessness. How sad. I hope that works out for them. There is no circuitry available for that. Instead, it's like, I'm here. It's freaked out. These must be related. So either I must be in danger, or I must be the cause of stress, or life is stressful, or all of the above. Life is dangerous. You can't tell. These associations are visceral. Kind of like if you've ever had food poisoning, it could be a restaurant you've been to many, many times, had great experiences, and then there's that one time. And if you get food poisoning at that place that one time, almost every time after that, when you think about that place, it's like, oh, I don't know. I don't know if I want that again. It's such a visceral experience. It gets wired right in. So for kids in the womb and the first 3 to 6 years, everything is a really visceral experience. They don't understand it. They just experience it, and then they make meaning about it later. So if there's stress and tension, the kid will start to make associations about, oh, things are not good, things are iffy, things are dangerous, things are uncertain. If that kid doesn't die, then those associations become automated and they become part of your worldview. Now, not all associations are bad. All of us have had some experience of, oh, well, things are okay at the moment when we were little, and so things might be okay. Even the worst parents have to sleep sometimes. So all of us have had some experience of, oh, maybe I'm okay for now. The more stress, tension, fear, grief there was when you were either in the womb or growing up, the more beliefs and associations you will have about that, and the more the world outside will seem to reflect that to you. So if you think about a building, because a lot of times I'll get people, I'll say, well, I'll say, you seem to have this belief. And I'll say, well, I worked on that belief. And I'll say, you worked on it how? Oh, well, I decided it was time to believe this. Here's the thing about consciously trying to change a belief. Your brain develops over time. So we think of this part of our brain, the cerebral cortex, that's what we think of as our brain. We're very proud of it. We like to brag to the other species about all the wrinkles up there in our cortex. But that part of our brain, the adult parts of our brain, the cortex, is not fully developed until, for kids, for women, somewhere between 20 to 25. For men, somewhere between 25 and 30, or as my friend Carl says, somewhere between 30 and death. But this is the last part of the brain to develop, the cortex, the part that does abstract thought and creativity and time. We're the only creatures who do time. You will never see an aardvark with a day planner. Time, we're the ones who do linear time. Imagination, that happens in the cortex. That stuff, consequences, right up here. That stuff is not fully functional until somewhere between 25 and 30. Your emotions and your safety wiring, that is rolling in utero. And a lot of this safety patterning gets laid down in utero in the first 3 years especially. And it's mostly through association. How was it? What was going on? And how much of it did your system take responsibility for? Because little kids, they take kind of responsibility for everything. If things are iffy, it's probably my fault. This is sort of how kids work. So if somebody has a belief about, oh, you can't trust the world, this usually means either their parents felt unsafe in the world or the kid couldn't trust their parents or both. But if somebody has a belief, oh, you can't trust the world, that's probably from somewhere in those first couple years, which means it's literally stored in a different part of the brain from this part. So if you think of it as a building, if somebody's 30 years old, imagine a 30-story building. Any tall building has a foundation, a chunk of which is below ground, right? That's what makes the building stable, is the foundation, and the bigger the building, the more that's underground. So if you think of the first 3 to 6 years as being the foundation of the building, the first 3 years are probably below ground, right? Below conscious awareness. If you think of the 30th floor, the penthouse, if you're 30 years old, imagine the 30-year-old brain is up there in the penthouse. If the 30-year-old, if there's a crack in the foundation of a building, remodeling the 30th floor will not change the crack in the foundation. So if we have beliefs running that, oh, the world is not safe, or you can't safe, or maybe I'm not safe, or maybe I'm not okay, or maybe I can't have what I want, maybe I'm not worthwhile. If those are in the foundation, remodeling the penthouse will not change it. This is the whole reason I have a job. However, if you revise the foundation, if you make the foundation of a building more solid, the building is more solid, it can support more structure, it can get bigger. With humans, if you revise the foundation, then their life gets more solid. It can hold more. And the more people whose foundation gets safer, gets more solid, more whole, the more safety they experience. Because we do not see the world as it is, we see it as we are. And we create it from where we are. So the beliefs that you have that are in the way of your life are not recent events. The beliefs that are limiting your experience of life were laid down really early. They're in a different part of the brain. And those beliefs, those associations which come beliefs, are what filter our experience. And it literally filters out everything that doesn't match our beliefs and only allows in what does. The more certain you can be something is a core belief is if you say, well, that's not a belief, that's just how things operate. I'll have people tell me, Michelle, that's just how that's not a belief, that's how business operates. But because I don't have those beliefs, it is not how my business operates or thrives. So there is no out there. Now, a lot of people think power is about controlling other people or circumstances. This is actually based in fear. If I'm not in control, then I need to find a way to be able to control those people, how they think or what they do, so that I can be safe. This is a huge limitation because, first off, you're not going to be able to, nobody can change the way somebody else thinks. Although this is what a good chunk of social media is trying to do. Nobody can, and fighting with somebody on social media has yet to change a person's belief. Trying to change other people to get your world to be safer is like screaming at a mirror, expecting it to get with the program. Imagine yelling at your mirror and waiting for it to do something different. This is what happens when we try to get other people to change their beliefs. We don't have control over other people because of free will. And what we call into our experience is coming through our filters anyway. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with who will say, after we've shifted some of their beliefs, they will tell me that certain people in their lives just suddenly started behaving differently. Because now they're running, the person themselves is running different filter, and it seems to be like all of a sudden their mother or their partner is behaving differently. One woman I worked with, she had some very unuseful beliefs. And so we changed some about men, very unuseful beliefs around men. We changed those, and 2 weeks later, she emailed me to say, what the hell's going on with all the men in the world? They're all being so nice to me. Not only was she finding men who were kind, new men, but even men that she knew were behaving differently. When her beliefs changed, they seemed to change because she wasn't actually experiencing them. She was experiencing a filtered version of them. We are all experiencing a filtered version of reality. The question is it a filtered version that is working for you? Now, when it comes to the mirror, if you change you, shocker, instantly the mirror changes too. This is where your superpowers are. Again, I'm not talking positive thinking. I'm talking about actually rewiring your filters, your beliefs, so that you literally not only experience, but create different realities and stabilize them. So let's see what kind of beliefs and associations, some that you might have running that you might not even be aware of, okay? What I'll do is I'm going to say a word or phrase, and you're going to let your brain just fill in the blank. Don't think a lot about it. Just notice the first kind of words or phrase that pop up in your head, okay? So to be safe, I need to okay. Try this one. I'm just going to do kind of a list of them. I am safest when fill in the blank. I'm going to do these kind of fast because I don't want you to think a lot about it. It's not safe to it's not safe to be people are safest when it's not safe for people to my mother felt safest when my mother felt unsafe when my father felt safest when my father felt unsafe when for the world to be safe, we are headed for power is people think power is if I was powerful, my father thought power my mother thought power and people with power now let's just do just like five more around love. My father loved me best when my mother loved me best when to be loved, I need to love is and people are most loved when so if you had some answers in there that surprised you, that were not as cheerful as you might have thought, what this means is you are human. All of us have more than one belief about everything because we had more than one experience about everything, more than one association growing up. So even if you might have some beliefs that you're safe, if you're not experiencing that all the time, it's because you also have some beliefs that you are not safe. We can have contradictory beliefs. In fact, all of us do. Because growing up, almost all of us had contradictory experiences and associations. And in those early years, there was nothing in there going, wait, we can't believe that we're safe and in control and also believe that we're not safe or not in control. Those two things don't match. There's nothing in there that decides which one is true. So all of us are a mass of conflicting beliefs and associations, and our experience in life is sort of the outpicturing of the total of our beliefs. So everything that you do that starts to change, to chip away one by one at the old associations that aren't working anymore, starts to shift the balance in your beliefs, in your life, and actually in the world towards more and more of what you want and less of what you don't. Right now, we're in a heightened period of change. Like this is a really, truly unique period of human history where everything that's old and out of date is getting pushed up to the surface so that we can revise it. All the fears and prejudices that have been in the basement, that have been below ground, are all being pushed right up on top. This is good because you can't change what you don't know is there. But all that stuff is being brought up so it can be shifted. So right now, is it the end of the world? It's the end of some worlds, but the worlds that are ending are not the worlds we're really interested in maintaining anymore. And whole new worlds are beginning. What's the world you're actually wanting to create now? What's the new world that you're wanting to live in? Let's talk about coherence. They have done studies. This is where in communities where there is a lot of crime or a lot of strife, they have, let's say, a city of 300,000. They would send in a group at 1% of the population. So if it's a city of 300,000, they would get 3,000 people who would agree to meditate or pray for peace and well-being for that community. And they could notice the stats immediately begin to drop, sometimes 30 or more percent. Drops in rates of crime, drops in emergency room visits, and they could track it. When those people would go in, they would do 1% of the population. The crime rate, the threat rate would drop 1%. 1% focusing on peace and well-being could begin to make an offer to the entire system. They weren't forcing people to change. They weren't trying to change people's mind. That 1% were focused and vibrating at a different frequency. 1% could, if 1% could bring it down 36%, that is astonishing. They've done studies with helium too, where you can watch helium molecules. It's fascinating. If you drop helium to a certain temperature, when 1% of the molecules come into coherence, all of a sudden, all of the molecules come into coherence. It's quite astonishing to watch. So we don't actually, if you want the world to change, you don't have to change 51% of the world or 100%. 1% makes a huge change. It's a much smaller number than we realize. And it doesn't start by you getting other people to change. It starts with you. What you create in your life, what you experience in your life, and what you feel in your life. Because your attention, where you consciously put your attention, matters. Attention is actually what collapses quantum waves into reality. So what you pay attention to collapses quantum waves and stabilizes them. So where you put your conscious attention really does matter. Everything you do that focuses on peace, on joy, on abundance, on kindness, on possibility, and love and freedom has an effect on you and your body and your life, and on the people and environment and objects, physical objects around you. Because you not only experience those things, but you radiate them. But consciously, what you can do has limits. Because consciously, you can only pay attention to somewhere between 5 to 9 things at a time. That's about it. Unconsciously or subconsciously, your system is processing 2 million things per second. So in terms of processing power, your subconscious is where all your processing power really is. Your subconscious is what runs your automatic beliefs, because all your beliefs are automated. You never have to wake up in the morning and think, oh, what do I want to think about war today? Or what do I want to think about safety or power today? They're running automatically. So the real magic comes when you harness the huge processing part of your brain and rewire the subconscious beliefs so they run automatically. When automatically your system is running more and more beliefs and associations about your safety, your beauty, your worth, about there being enough for everyone, then you're not just radiating those for the time you're meditating, you're radiating those 24 hours a day without having to try. That's where our real power is in changing. We need the conscious mind to decide, but consciously, you don't want to have to do this. I mean, all of us have lives and things. Occasionally, I like to watch Netflix. I don't want to have to be meditating all the time to feel like I'm changing the world. When you change it for you at the subconscious level, you change it so something different is running automatically 24 hours a day. You radiate something differently. You collapse different quantum waves. You encounter different people. It's truly magic. You're continually radiating new energies and paradigms. You start to warp time and space and matter to both generate and stabilize those paradigms. 1%. Some people have said it's an even smaller amount. It's like 1% of 1%. But
Square root of 1% is what I always read.
Yes, I understand. Thank you, Tim. But what matters is not what other people are doing. What matters is what you're doing. So if you would like help rewiring the automatic beliefs, because you consciously, it's really hard to rewire your subconscious beliefs. They're different parts of the brain. I've been doing this work for 26, 27 years now. When I have stuff up, I have to go see someone else or do a change pattern that's designed to revise it, because they're stored in different parts of my brain. The part of me that does this work and teaches this work is one part of my brain. The part that runs those old beliefs is an older part of the brain in a different location. So if you'd like help to revise whatever beliefs are in your way, I would love to help. I mean, there's always money magic. It's a whole bunch of stuff to change beliefs. It doesn't have to be about money. Beliefs about safety, about freedom, about power, all of these can get shifted through going through those. We have Clear Path to Love that I offer. Understanding family constellations is learning how to do those, because trust me, we could use a whole lot more family constellation facilitators. Also, there's some new workshops I'm working on, Wired for Love and Connection, Wired for some kind of well-being. The title isn't there yet. And ultimately Wired for Magic, which is my new class that I'm loving. Would love to be able to help you. And if there's other kinds of revision you're looking for, let us know, because this is what I'm wanting, is I'm wanting to give people the tools to revise the stuff that's not just creating their life, but creating all our lives, so that this transition can go smoother and more intentionally to what we want. We're going through the transition. It's going to happen. But we still have choice about how and when it happens and what it looks like on the other side. This is an amazing time. You all have superpowers. We just mostly have been wasting our superpowers trying to change other people. So everything that you do that changes you, I cannot emphasize enough. When you change you, you do change the world. You not only change your world, but you do change it for all of us. But that's where your power is, not in changing others. What was it Rumi said, when I was young and clever, I thought I had to change the world. Now I'm old and wise, and I changed myself. If you're wanting to make a difference in the world, it all begins with you. That is where you have the power and the authority to change things. You are where the magic happens. And I don't want you to have a near-death experience to know that. Peace on earth begins in you. When you're not fighting with yourself, that's where peace on earth starts. Freedom on earth begins in you. When you're free to do and be what you want to do and be, that's where it starts. And happiness on earth, when you're happy in you, That's the whole ball game. Happiness on earth begins with you. So wherever you go and whatever the next few days, weeks, months, years are bringing you, whatever this change is looking for you, if you would like help, we'd be happy to help. And if not, you wouldn't have come on to this webinar if some part of you weren't interested in making it a better world. And for that, I am just so thankful for every one of you who has put your time and attention on things being better. This is where it gets better. So I'm going to say this, I'm going to stop the lecture part. I'm going to say thank you so much for being here. I wish each and one of you, every one of you could see how truly beautiful you are. I look forward to that day, but until then, may the changes that are coming be the changes you've been hoping for. And may the hopes that you have become the reality of your life so you don't need to hope anymore. Thank you, everybody. I'm now gonna open it up for questions. Nita.
Hello there, Michelle. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Wow. What about
Uh-huh.
stuff we bring from previous lives and
Uh-huh.
teenage brains and their subconscious?
Okay, are those two separate questions?
Yep.
Okay. Stuff we bring from other lives, usually that's a little bit of bleed through. You know, if you're in one department in a company and then you get switched to a different department in the same company, the problems of the first department are not your problems anymore, right? Just because you can hear through the wall what's going on over there, so usually I tell people I'll ask people kind of what's the age of you that's resonating with that previous life, because it's at this point, not your monkeys, not your circus. Like there's no point living this life trying to change a different experience or reality. Yeah. Are you still there? I can't, you've disappeared from my screen.
Oh yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So usually I ask people, how old is the part of you that's pipelined in? First off, let that part know that's not your work here. Your work is here. And even if you died in that other lifetime, look, you're still here. So apparently death is not permanent. None of it is permanent. And what did you mean about teenage brains?
Well, so are they developed enough? Like, how do you, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Are they going to sit through a session? Right?
No, well, probably not. I mean, there's
Right.
some work you can do, but when someone is in their teenage years, there is a massive remodel going on where literally things are being moved around in the brain. And so there is so much change going on that typically introducing more change can be a little much. Usually the big belief change work either needs to, either you want to change the experience for a child, not try and change their beliefs, but change the experience when they're in those early years. Everything you do that makes it safer, freer, happier for you is good news for your kids. Or let them work on it when they get older, when it's their choice and when they can choose what they want instead. Usually ideal, but at any age, anything you do that makes it better for you is good news for your kids.
Thank you.
Jeremy?
Hey, Michelle, thanks for doing this. One of the things that I struggle with is, and I get everything you're saying about the filters and all that stuff, how we perceive reality, that there's no objective out there. All that said, you know, it seems like historically, at least in my experience, historically, we've mostly been living in a shared narrative, aka shared reality, sort of where we all these like convergent reality or divergent realities sort of enter into a shared agreement. But like right now, it seems like the world is kind of fracturing, you know, where like there's all these like sort of divergent realities and narratives that kind of, you know, like the QAnon phenomenon, or like, you know, the left versus the right narrative. And I'm just struggling to like be with all of this. So I'm kind of curious if you have anything to say to me to offer relief.
Because we're starting to come out of a little bit of the trance that there is one way. And what we're starting to experience is the effect of different beliefs on reality. Like, to be able to really change your beliefs, first off, you have to have a visceral sense that they actually have an effect. Because like I say, I'll still get people say, well, that's not a belief. That's actually how things are. I still get that from people, as though there is an objective reality. So what I think your work might be, Jeremy, and I would never tell you, but the anxiety that it brings up for you is what?
I feel like I'm losing connection with certain people.
Mhm.
Like I feel lost, and there's also something about this that mirrors my relationship with my mom, because I've always felt like she was just in her own reality and never could see me and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes sense. So some of your beliefs about your mom are playing out. Because let me give you a metaphor. If you walk up to an all-you-can-eat buffet, you know, and there's shrimp and there's vegetables and there's little beef Wellington puffs. Those are all different, but it doesn't freak you out. It's not like, which one is real? Are the shrimp puffs real? Are the beef Wellington puffs real? Right? It's more a question of, which do you want?
Yeah.
This is why that question of what would you like is one of the most profound questions. Because if you're trying to figure out what's real, that's quite a rabbit hole. Because there's no end to what's real. So the most significant question is, what would you like? What do you want to experience? What do you want to create? What do you want to share? If it's shrimp puffs, fine. Right? If it's shrimp puffs and beef Wellington puffs, I salute you. Like them both. But you can still love the people who are eating the Brussels sprouts, which I do not like, but I love people who are eating the Brussels sprouts, right? We don't have to have, I know it is difficult, but we don't have to believe the same things the people we love believe. You don't have to do that to love them.
Okay.
And I understand it is a challenge. It'll be probably a little easier when you get some of that stuff, that's stuff with your mom that's being now kind of out pictured on the world, or directly with her, right? Revising that would be really good.
Yeah, makes sense.
When you think about the QAnon stuff, if you amp up the feeling that you get in your body, it turns into what? Is it anxiety? Is it disconnection? Is it both?
I mean, if I amp it up all the way, it's terror.
Okay, so that's
Yeah.
the place to start, right? If somebody's shrimp puffs are causing you terror, then go find where those beliefs are coming from, revise those, and then it ceases to so much be an issue, and you're also not feeding the world vat of terror, right? Because emotions are contagious.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So everyone who generates that fear is spreading. I noticed that when the pandemic started, the fear spread so much faster than the virus. So everyone that's generating less fear and more freedom, more love, more security, that becomes contagious too. Let me just check in with Jen, and then we will probably be time to wrap up. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Hi, Michelle.
You are.
Hello. With the questions, it brought up a whole heap of stuff that I'm sure is from when I was very little around safety, like, you know, I have to be quiet to be safe, all this sort of stuff. But and I see in my younger years, I've created a lot of situations where I wasn't safe and I didn't have a voice. And so I became victim. But then it's like I did the pendulum swing, and then I became more like, I'd even become aggressive to defend myself. And later in life, I feel like, I don't know, I probably have more range or flexibility, but I guess until now, I never really even thought of the possibility of just believing everything, like I'm always safe everywhere I go. I think this has brought up a realization that I still believe I have to defend myself, and that it's not safe out there. And, fearing for my son will get kidnapped by a pedophile ring or something stupid like that.
Yeah. Yes.
With this world, like there's nothing out there. Is it ecological to believe that I'm safe? Like, I don't want to be naive or like put myself in danger or my son.
Here's
but
what I would do. I'm going to interrupt you because I'm running out of time.
Sorry.
No, you're doing great. I'm sorry for having to interrupt. Find out where the fear is coming from and revise that there, so that at least if you're going to have fears, they should be current ones. You'll never lose your ability. Like if there's a rhinoceros or a wallaby on crack that's coming after you, you'll probably be able to deal with it as an adult and not be like, oh, aren't we all God's creatures? You'll probably still be able to respond. But if you're responding from that place, and aggression, by the way, is just fear projected outward. Aggression is fear. People who are like, so this is what we're seeing in the war. War comes from fear. Fear of not having enough, fear of needing control, fear of needing to control other people, fear for survival. Nobody wakes up feeling so safe and happy in the morning. I just have to go declare war on somebody. Nobody does that. And so the stuff that we're seeing, the aggression, the uncertainty, people creating financial insecurity, it comes basically down to fear. And most of our fear patterning, like 99% of it, is old responses to out-of-date circumstances. So I would say start there.
Okay.
And then see what happens. Okay.
Thanks a lot.
You're so welcome. So I want to thank you all for joining me for this hour. Like I said, if there's any way that we can help support you in shifting that stuff, I'm happy to do that. And I really want to thank you because this time is really precious. So thank you for your attention, but also thank you for everything you're doing that make your lives better. It truly does make it better for us all. Everything you do that makes it better for you makes better a better world and better worlds for all of us. Thank you so much, everybody. So many blessings to all of you.
Bye, Michelle. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
You.
Thanks,
Bye.
Michelle.
Bye, Michelle.